Uh, should I wait for Jazz to come back in? Or are we good?
I'm here still.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Y'all know what happened. I'm here.
All right. So, hey, uh, we doing chapter 3. All right. By the way, don't know if I've ever read a Langston Hughes poem before. I feel like I have in school, but probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have. That Hughes poem on the first page, it made me go look it up and I'm like, okay, Langston has some skills, obviously. But anyway, so um, so it's so question. First question. All right. So basically, the chapter starts off with the Great Migration. Um, a lot of blacks leaving the South to go to the North, where they were, like you said, promised a kinder mistress. Um, but we all know what happened up north too. They had the unofficial segregation laws, but they still kind of enforced them, the social segregation laws. And so knowing what it was like in the South and in the North, would you personally have taken that risk of going up north, or would you have stayed in the South?
I would have gone up north still, just because if all of these people are leaving the South, and if this number of people is leaving a region all at one time, what does that tell you about where they were and about the catastrophic experiences that they continued to go through as they were there, and what would have happened if they would have stayed? Because look at what happened to a lot of the people that did stay in the South. Now, yes, racism is all over America, but it was more prevalent and in your face in the South, and still is to this day, than it is in any other part of the United States. So I definitely would have left. And there were better opportunities for some of those people, but not a whole lot changed. But to answer your question, I still would have left.
Okay. Um,
I think that I would have left as well. Just because basically the same thing he just said. Like, I mean, I feel like the odds are in your favor.
yeah. Yashanda and Kath. I didn't even look at the names. So I don't know y'all names. Let me look. Yeah, I was right. Catherine. Okay, Catherine and Yashanda.
Don't start this today.
uh, you said you would have stayed, or
Katie, it's on you.
Oh, well, um, I think that because even though there was still racism in the North, they were at least a little more ashamed of it. I think that in the South, there is a history of not even being ashamed of racism and not even trying to be trying to cover it up. I think the North was really focused on covering it up, and I think that the chapter really kind of goes into that, how they just made laws that sounded less racist than Jim Crow, and that that mainly they left it up to businesses, white-owned businesses, to squelch black-owned business and black-owned banks. But by the same token, I think that the chances of a black person being successful in business and in making money was better. So I think that if I had been in the situation, then I probably would have also moved just for the better opportunity.
and y'all remember the North was still violently racist. They didn't mention it in the book, but I had did some extra digging. But there were still situations in the book where they showed you that. But it was in 1919 that the Chicago, the big Chicago riot happened. Apparently, it happened over a black teenager drowned in Lake Michigan after violating the unofficial segregation of Chicago's beaches and being stoned by a group of whites. The police refused to arrest the white man, even though eyewitnesses identified him. So it caused a week of rioting between black and white gangs in Chicago, well, black and white Chicago people. Um, and it ended in August, and 23 black people have been killed. More than 500 people have been injured, and an additional 1,000 black families have lost their homes when they were torched by rioters. So I don't know if it would have been better to financially and kind of economically get your feet on the ground and then have it torn from you, or staying in the South and seeing, I mean, going through that. I mean, I don't think it was. I think you might have met in the middle, somewhere in the middle states, like they were saying Durham or Durham or Tulsa. Was that Tulsa, Oklahoma? But then again, you saw kind of what happened with there. So, or was it Durham? One of them. The Black Wall Street, the one that got burnt down. So again, I don't know if it would have been better. Um, Either way, but yeah, I probably would have took my chances somewhere up north too.
Yeah, they just should have kept going to Canada till they got to Canada.
What was in Canada at this time? Like, I don't know what the heck going on. It would be a different world if we would have kept going to Canada. Oh, let's see. Hey, Monique. I don't know if you want to jump in or not. If not, you don't have to. The question was, in chapter 3, knowing how the South was, and a lot of blacks migrated to the North. Would you have preferred to, if it were you back then, would you have moved up north, or would you have taken your chances in the South? And if you don't want to participate, just let us know. But
Hey, everybody.
hey,
I probably would have moved up north. Even though they could have had racism, it still was an opportunity that I could have taken that wasn't in the South. I probably would have went on and used that for my advantage.
okay, almost there. So everybody agreed going north. Okay. All right. And let's see. So they did mention Binga's bank. His story was he was definitely a brilliant man. He made good use out of his life, like all the businesses he ended up owning, and the way he flipped the real estate market, and to work for his advantage. And his character really showed on page 72 when, sorry, I was looking at my notes. Okay, when he said, they said that he purchased a prominent home in a white neighborhood, and his house was bombed 7 times. Oh, they did mention the race riots of 1919. His house was bombed 7 times. Each time they left a note demanding that he leave the property, and he said, I won't run. Well, I will not run the races at stake, and not myself. If they can make me move, they will have accomplished much of their aim, because they say they can. Because they can say, we made Jesse Bingham move, certainly you'll have to move to all the rest. If they can make the leaders move, what show will the small buyers have? So he really wasn't thinking of himself. He really thought about his people as a race. He definitely was trying to do a lot better for everybody. And he owned more than just a bank. He did I want to say, magazine. He had a few things under his belt. There we go. Was that him? Yeah. No, I lied. That wasn't him. That was Anthony Overton. But no, Benga still was a brilliant, successful man, and the way his story ended was very tragic. So do you think his downfall? Because really, he could have made it through the depression. Needed a loan to bail him out. He could. Do you think that him trusting in a white institution was his downfall, or that him thinking that his money that contributed to that institution would like keep him safe from basically racism or anything like that?
I think that he put a lot of trust in what he was being told. I mean, they're being told that in order to become a member of this organization to basically protect your bank, you have to have so much financial capital and you have to qualify for it. And because he jumped through those hoops, he assumed that that would be recognized and honored whenever he needed something. And it later says that he's the only bank that they wouldn't actually bail out that was a member of this organization. So I don't necessarily put him at fault for that, because he saw the discrimination, he saw the hoops, but he was given an opportunity because he was able to overcome those obstacles. And I think that he just put a lot of faith and trust into people who he just tried to give the benefit of the doubt. And I think that because there is so much back and forth between whether or not a Black economy is even feasible, that the idea of integrating the economy and collaborating with the white banks and the white organizations seemed like I guess, more of a concrete idea at that time period, because he had already seen, what happens whenever you try to work solely as just a Black bank. So I don't necessarily knock him for trying that. I feel like he tried to do what he thought had to be done. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. And if I've watched these other banks fail trying to do it independently, if I have an opportunity to collaborate with somebody, I'm going to take it.
True.
Yeah, I agree with Jasmine. I think he did everything that he did in good faith, and in the end, they screwed him over. Like they did countless other times before in other situations. So yeah, I don't hold him responsible for that. They just basically snaked him. Pretty much, he was paying, into that particular membership, the clearinghouse, and they just said they would, like specifically said, the chairman said, a little nigger bank that does not mean anything, they weren't going to help. And, it was unfortunate that he put his money out there on the line and wasn't able to recoup that in order to help save his bank. But I don't think it was through any fault of his own.
Do you think he made a mistake when he was trying to collect that second money for the bank, and then apparently he said that he couldn't put the money, they caught him for that and said it was fraud or something, and he said, well, you wouldn't allow me to put it in a state bank, but they convicted him anyway. Do you think he should have just given the money back if possible, or what? What was that?
Well, he was basically raising that money to open a second bank.
Right.
So I think he wasn't counting on things to happen the way that they did. But of course, it goes on to say that he was the only one that was charged with the financial crime during the Great Depression. I don't think he did anything wrong. I think that the white people were basically just using him as a scapegoat.
Yeah, off to the side of that paragraph, I actually wrote the question, what was he supposed to do? Because if you're telling me that if I'm raising money to start another bank, I can't keep it in a currently owned bank, like where am I supposed to keep this money? And I don't think he had the opportunity to give it back, because that's like a thief getting caught and going to court and be like, you know what, can you forgive me if I give it back? They've already accused you at that point, so they're not letting him off the hook.
It was a setup. They were out to get him the whole time. So I don't think there's anything that he could have done.
Very true. And I thought randomly, I was really upset at his wife for divorcing him, unless it was something that they both agreed or something, because he didn't want her implicated. But if she left him literally because of what he was going through, I said, that's the lowest thing you can do. The man was already in his 60s at that point. It's just crazy. And he had to spend years in jail, and all he ever tried to do was help his people. That was just sad to me.
He couldn't walk around being wealthy and thinking he was better than white folk. They were going to come after him in some kind of way.
I don't even think he tried to be better. I think maybe he was
I
trying to
didn't
be
say he was,
equal.
no, that was complete dripping with sarcasm
Gotcha.
in my voice when I said that.
uh, let me see. Oh, okay. His situation also brought to light how a lot of us, especially probably back then, the resource and information wasn't available. Didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes because there were a lot of people who blamed him. There were a few who still supported him, but um, it's like we have a certain harshness with our people when we fail. Like we'll be there super proud when you lift you up, when you succeeded, but when you fail, wow, it's like savage. People turn on you in a savage way. And I still don't understand it. And it kind of ties into something I was going to say further down, where pages 84 to 85, where they were talking about how the bankers had to really kind of work to get the trust back from Black people, the Black bankers. And it's like I don't understand how. Let me see. Why do we believe, like, we believe white people's lies on a constant basis, and they're never looking out for us. They constantly show us how much they don't care about us, don't want us. But when Black people earnestly try to do something and it fails, it I don't know. It's just like complete turn off. Now we don't trust our people. Now we saying, oh, you tried to swindle me, you know. And honestly, we don't see the forces that are working against the person who tried to help, or we just don't understand that sometimes people try to swing you, but sometimes people are really genuine towards you, and things just don't work out. But why do we have to work so much harder? We already have to work hard to gain white people's trust, but why do we have to work so much harder to gain trust in our own people, do you think?
Yeah,
Because
oh, go ahead, Andre.
well, uh, coinciding with what this book said, or what the chapter elaborates upon, as well as just so many countless examples of what have happened, is that there are so many times where our own people have been betrayed or lied to or taken advantage of somehow, some way by their own people. And this has happened countless times across various industries and with various people in our own community. And it's like when you have gone through that experience by your own people, that is registered within your subconscious mind. And when you get in another situation like that, you're thinking about this isn't everybody. This is just most people. The average person that goes through this or has been through this, you're thinking about what transpired in a previous situation when you was taken advantage of, and you think, well, this may happen again. It comes with the expectation. It's really like it's almost like we're expecting this to happen. It's the trust issues that we really have to get over, and we don't even realize, like you said, the coordinated effort that's really behind what's making us not trust one another. And also, to be honest, that we just have to start being more open-minded and start doing our own research and really start seeing things. We have to get behind the scenes and really see how things are. Most of the time, people on the outside looking in, they don't really have a clue of what's going on. But if they get in the same situation as the people that they accused or did in fact take advantage of them. Like when you go into business yourself, and as the average Black business owner is already limited in the resources they have anyway, so they're only given so much to work with, and you have to use the best you can with you have to do the best you can with what you have. And if there's a mistake made, you shouldn't be penalized for that because you lacked something that you needed, but it was only because the resources that you have compared to your white competitors and white counterparts are not as accessible, if you all understand what I'm saying. But that's my take on that.
I think
I
in
just
addition,
I never understood how people rock that way. Like, why are we always so forgiving of Caucasian people, but we give ourselves such a hard time? I mean, who has swindled us more than white people in the history of existence? Which is why I can't understand why we are so hard on
I understand.
people that look like us. I mean, we could talk about how 50 million times you go to McDonald's and the shake machine isn't working. That one experience
That's
you
why I
have with
said,
the black restaurant, you got to blast them all over Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Like, why is that? Some of the stuff that you talked about, DeAndre, but I still think that is crazy as hell. That's just
I,
me.
I answer that question, but I want to hear other people's take. So hold that thought, Yashonda.
well, I was going to actually kind of spin off of that a little bit and say that I think that people do it for security reasons. Like, we've seen repeatedly, people try to start segregationist economies and, bank and do business that are only within their community. But if there's not enough of a collaborative effort, then we've seen time and time again, there's not going to be success.
Yeah.
So at that point, I think that everybody, as much as we can say that we are communal and we put our community first, at the end of the day, we have to put ourselves first. And if my money is going to be more secure in working with a white company or buying with a white company, I feel like people are more prone to do that. If I can go and get this same service for cheaper because they're able to wholesale it, or I am able to go somewhere and go with someone who's had, years and years of experience as opposed to this other place who is just up and getting started, I think that plays a huge part in it too. It's just kind of security of where I'm placing my funds.
Yeah. I mean, and you definitely have a point there, Jessica. Jasmine, I was about to call you Jessica. I'm sorry, but Yashonda, if you're still holding that thought, and I imagine you are, to answer your question, why aren't we as forgiving to ourselves as we are the white people? We have to understand for years we were oppressed by them and we didn't have no choice but to forgive them. But as you know, with us being forced to fight and kill and hate each other, that's why we continue to fall out. And that mentality has made its way from generation to generation. So that's what that is. And it's gonna take, just as it took hundreds of years to instill that in us, it's gonna take just as much, if not more time to undo it because of the damage that's came along with that.
Do you do you also think that because when it's our own people, it cuts us a lot deeper than it does a white person?
Of course.
Probably.
Even
Of
though
course.
we know that the person had good intentions, though.
That's why I cut so deep, because we know they had good intentions.
Which falls back into my point of being more secure in going ahead and going with a company that's established, and anything that's been pre-established because of privilege and because of situations, like, it's going to be primarily owned by white people.
And that may be where that me and my mentality came from. Like, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I need to look out for me and my family. And that's probably how a lot of people, feel. I mean, a lot of us are like that now. So,
I mean, if that continues to be the way that people respond and look at that situation, you will never see people be able to come together to do cooperative economics if that trust is not there.
correct. I agree.
So the question is, I guess one of the things that I saw was that they were talking about how communities would come together and, like, small groups of people would, like, cluster together and loan each other money so they could all come up.
Hmm.
And so basically doing it on a much smaller scale. And it kind of got my brain going as to, like, is that what's going to have to be necessary? Is it the issue that everyone is trying to start on such a grand scale that it ensures failure as opposed to just starting small and growing?
Yeah, you know what? That is what we're that is something that people in the various people in the community are gonna have to do because Black Wall Street took time. It only started with like a few people, and then through a collaborative effort built over time, it became what it became. And O.W. Gurley and the people that eventually helped him out, because I don't know all of their names, and I didn't even know he was the founder until I went to the Legacy Center this past week. But through O.W. Gurley and the many of the people that started Black Wall Street, it took them quite some time, and even in other communities like that in other areas, like where Central Park was and is in New York was what Black Wall Street was in Tulsa many years ago.
What do you mean? Like they had kind of
No,
another Black Wall Street up there?
there was a Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina, and there was something similar to Black Wall Street in Central Park. I can't think of what it was called before that, but it was similar to Black Wall Street, kind of like Auburn Avenue is in Atlanta.
Miss me with that one, but I don't know much history about anything. So cool. I'm gonna look that one up. I'm in Atlanta, so I
Are
should
you
know
talking
about that.
about in North Carolina?
Oh, there was one in North Carolina, but there was also a community like Black Wall Street where Central Park is in New York. I can't. It was called. I cannot think of what it was called.
Okay, because the one in North Carolina was called Haiti. Hay. They named it Haiti, where they spelled it Hayyti. I don't know about the other one.
The, the place that I'm talking about that is now known as Central Park wasn't called Black Wall Street. It was called something else, and I can't think of the name of it.
Oh wow. Yeah, I definitely gotta you kind of turned me on to some with that Auburn thing. I looked it up now. I said I'm gonna look into that more later. I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that. Wow. Okay. Um sorry. So how do you think oh no, okay, so you said that we had to start off smaller and kind of do it that way because they tried to overtake it too big. Honestly, I forgot what I was gonna say about that. I don't think it would have worked. I completely forgot what I was gonna say about that, but I don't think it would have worked then. I completely forgot. I'm sorry.
It's like I'm thinking about it in capacity of like, so people make a lot of jokes about like Mexicans because they'll talk about how a whole bunch of them live in one house and all these other things.
Mhm.
But I think that that's kind of what I'm envisioning when I say start small scale. Like that may very well be a family and they may very well be really uncomfortable for like 2 or 3 years while there's 15 of them living in a 3 bedroom house.
Mhm.
But after that 3 years, because they've all been paying, $50 a month in rent,
Mhm.
now they're all sitting on enough to go out and cash buy a house or to invest in a business or to buy a food truck or to purchase their vehicle or to do whatever it is that they need to do because they have come together for the greater good on a small scale to basically allow them to pool their funds.
And that could never work with us because, again, they the way they came together and the way they are, that culture, that history, is all together. It's all there. We can't live on top of each other like that because we're too different. We're too separate. I don't know how to explain it. But I really think it's a good idea. Um, honestly, it makes sense. Um,
Like when I was in grad school, I moved back because my second and third year, I had so much interning to do because I was teaching when I started and I couldn't, do my internships and continue a full-time job. So I, let my lease expire on my apartment. I was living in Sandy Springs and moved back to my parents' house. And I was commuting so much from Griffin to, because I was at the Mercer Atlanta campus on the north side of Atlanta. I was spending so much in gas money that I almost could have paid rent because I was having to drive up there 4 days a week. And so eventually my best friend was like, it's stupid. Why are you doing this? Why didn't you just come stay with me? And I was like, who am I to impose on you? Because she had a 3-bedroom townhouse, literally an exit from my school. And I would crash on her couch every now and then after a late night of class. But I felt that it wasn't in my realm of, I guess, privilege to ask her to actually live there. But whenever she extended it, I was like, I can't even really afford to pay you legit rent for what you could charge in this area. And she was like, nah, I'm not asking for that. I spent 2 years living with my best friend, damn near rent free, in order to be able to finish grad school. And so after I finished, I then turned around and did that for another one of my friends. One of my friends lived with me pretty much rent free while she finished grad school.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I look at, I guess, kind of that, and just, I guess, how it's just kind of perpetuated, and wonder, why is that so taboo in our culture? Like, I'm looking at how DeAndre is looking at me like, what the hell? But that's taboo in our culture.
It's not, no, 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 no. It's not tabooed in our culture amongst black women, but it is amongst black men.
Ish.
Because I know, because the last young lady I dated, she did the same thing with her friend, because her friend had also done that same favor for her. It's just you don't see men doing that, black men doing that as much as black women. And I just think that the reason, and this is going back to what Jessica said, the reason why it will be harder for us to do that is because this macho egocentric mentality that black men have, we just cannot come together. Like how many people in our hometown that are trying to do the same thing except on their own with their own resources, versus if they just came together, what could they do together? How many different non-profit organizations and how many different people have their own movements versus just trying to come together? You all don't have to answer that question, those of you to know what I'm talking about, but that's a rhetorical question. That's just simply an example of what you asked, Jessica.
What? I'm sorry.
I just brought that up just to further exemplify what it is you asked me, or what you asked everybody else. Why? Well, not necessarily what you asked, but what you said. How we can't move in an area. We can't all shack up and move in one house when that may be the very thing that worked for us. Because if it's working for them, why won't it work for us?
And
But I told you, but I elaborate why it won't work.
yeah, and
But no,
honestly,
I agree with the ego part. And a lot of it is some people are going to feel like it's looked upon as failure, because we already have this mentality that, you 18, you getting kicked out of your parents' house, you better go to school or get a job or go to the military type stuff. You can't stay here. That's already deeply embedded in our culture as it is. So I think some people feel like if I have to, live with somebody else or be in a situation where I feel like I'm inconveniencing or being a burden to someone else, it's a lot that has to do with ego at the same time too. So, and I had like one of my cousins, she went to college and came back home and literally lived with her parents for like maybe, I want to say 15 years. But when she moved out, she paid cash for her house. And she had more than enough money saved up where she could just, basically do anything she wanted to do. But of course, was it uncomfortable for her? Yes. Did she want to have some times where she wanted to have company over and get into stuff? But at the same time, a lot of people can't deal with that. They can't deal with they feel like they don't have a lot of freedom that they would have if, they were on their own. So
I agree with that because I've experienced that, so I know how she felt. I know how that is.
I definitely get it. And yeah, I guess it really is ego with us. Because yeah, I haven't asked for help before. I preferred. I thought, well, since I did this on my own, I'm just gonna do everything else on my own. I'd prefer to be homeless in a different city and live out of my car instead of asking for help when I needed it. So yeah, it probably. And I was just like, I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I don't know these people, but yeah, I should have. It would have been better had I asked for help earlier. Trying to finish college and just live out of my car, it wasn't what it was supposed to be.
So I guess my question, and it kind of steers us off topic from the book, but how do we combat, I guess, the hubris or the pride in our community that prevents us from asking for help to get help to be able to help each other?
Well,
We
who,
go ahead.
well, to answer your question, Jasmine, number one, we have to be willing to we have to be willing to learn from other people's examples and other people's experiences, because our lives are either going to be a warning or an example. Hopefully, for each and every one of us, is more so an example than a warning. Well, most of you all, except for myself, I've had a few warning moments. But anyway, so we're gonna have to learn from other people's experiences. Number one. Number two, what we're gonna have to do is we're just gonna have to start doing our own research, and really we just got to be honest with ourselves and take a self-assessment. Is this really something that's worth doing? And also, if those two don't work, then number three, which this will almost always work, even if it's repeated multiple times, is experiences. Some people are just gonna have to go through the experience, hit rock bottom, feel disgruntled, feel disheartened, and as a result, be able to get up from that and use that as a learning experience going forward.
I feel like us as a race, more than any other race, has been taught to do things on our own. Even white people be like, you got to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, while at the same time they're sitting here getting aid and help. And so we're taught not to ask for it because, one, don't expect it. Two, um, if we wanna make it, we got to make it on our own. We got to make it by our own 2 feet. And I think no matter what, that's kind of embedded in us from get go. We won't even ask for mental help when we know we need it. So I think the only way to kind of break that is to start making it be okay, especially when it comes to men. Start making it be okay to ask for help, to be vulnerable, to need something from people. And if we treat each other like family, like, hey, don't worry about it. You can always ask me. It's no problem. If we can all get to that mentality, maybe I think it'll help get us out of ego.
We can't be annoying like you know, Craig's dad, Willie. Like every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen. because, because you know how that kills it for people too. It's like, dang, I can't even eat anything, can't go in the refrigerator, you know, can't use the bathroom. We have to be much more genuine when we say that, you can stay here, or if you need something, let me know. Because a lot of times people say that, and then when you get to that point, it's the opposite. Now it's a problem. It's the issue. They want to tell you everything that you did wrong instead of just being like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna help you. And that's why a lot of people don't ask for help. I've seen it in my family plenty of times where somebody has needed something and then they want to give them a lecture instead of just saying, it's okay, you messed up, or it's okay that you need help. I'm gonna help you with that, basically.
That's true. All right. Any other questions or anything, Jazz, or anybody, before I jump back in? All right. Okay, jumping in. I do have a question. So why did blacks put their money in the banks in Harlem instead of just not putting your money there, like in the Chelsea Bank? you don't have to put your money in a bank? Was it because they were promised things? Was it like, because I know um Wright's mother, what is his name? Richard Wright's mother, at the bottom of page 83, she said, I'm gonna put this money in the bank and live off the interest. Did people really believe that back then? Why were they continuously putting their money into a bank they know didn't look out for them, didn't lend them loans, didn't do anything for them? Why not just keep your money at home?
Because the propaganda and advertisement at that time said that if you put your money here with us, you're going to be able to save to make it out of your current situation, basically save to riches. And that was what was purported in all aspects. And because, you look around and you see all the white people making it by doing the exact same thing, you assume it's going to work for you too.
Mhm.
Right.
Makes sense. All right. And Chelsea Bank was just trifling. You couldn't even get a black bank in the door. They wanted your money so bad. But it didn't make sense to me why did the North invite blacks up there for, I mean, basically they did kind of invite them up there during the Great Migration for promises of better this, better that, better this. But when they got there, you shoved them to the side and acted like you wanted nothing to do with them. What was the point in getting them up there in the first place?
To
Because
make money off of them.
true, because
Right.
And I
In
mean,
a
also,
capitalistic society, somebody's going to get exploited in order for it to work.
right. And I mean, it talks about how the money ultimately ends back up in the white banks anyway. So if you can get them to your area and you know that, yeah, let me encourage this black banking, because once they do home loans, it's going to eventually end up back on our table. Then it's just a short time before I have your money. Sure, come on. It's a waiting game.
all right. So they did speak about that, about basically no matter what, white people were being enriched off of black dollars. If black people put money in a bank, it was getting sent down to the white people to be lent out to. Or, no matter what, with the three things listed on what page was that? 87. I think it was money fracturing. All of that ended up back in white pockets too, banks' pockets. Okay, yeah. So the three specific features of the black condition impeded even basically the three reasons that they couldn't that they were they couldn't get out of the condition they were in was because of poverty, housing segregation, and money multipliers. That's what it was. So basically, blacks definitely weren't making as much, and I'm sure if there was a minimum wage back then, blacks would be making less than that, which contributed to how much they could put into a bank, which is also why black banks and people had to keep pulling their money in and out. So it definitely didn't help banks because they really couldn't save. And again, with the housing segregation, so it caused people to, and white people controlled what was valuable in a market. So of course, if a black person lives there, then the value of the property goes down. If the white people can't get them out, then it brings the neighborhood down. So the value of that down because white people really controlled the market and what was considered valuable or not. And also with the money multiplier, of course, because black banks didn't really have other banks to reach out to. I wish they would have. I mean, I don't know. Some of them teamed up, but they said only 8 banks made it. I think out of the depression, but or something like that. But yeah, basically, the money again, it couldn't circulate in the black community. It had to still go out to white sources. So knowing all three of those, it's kind of like a constant endless cycle. No matter what, you couldn't see your way out of it. Did y'all see any way that they could have come out of it without white help, or any solution, or anything that might have worked to kind of help break them out of this?
Well, there may be a few things that could have worked, but ultimately, I think things would have ended up being sabotaged or not working altogether, it will probably only would have worked for a little while. So I don't think it would have gotten very far because history has shown us that no matter what we've tried to do, we've not gotten very far.
So they did talk about.
I don't think at the time anybody really had an answer for that, whether it was Booker T. Washington or W.E.B. Du Bois or Carter
Marcus
G.
Garvey.
Woodson or Marcus Garvey. Everybody was trying to take a different approach with what they thought would work as far as wealth building for the Black community, but nobody was really on the same page with it. And there was really no blueprint for how it could have worked out, basically. And it, even when she was talking in the book about as long as they operated in a segregated economy with the Black banks, it was going to basically fail. Okay, because you're operating within the poverty, within the housing segregation, and not having the money multipliers and actually having higher operating costs than white banks because they spent more and earned less from their customers. Not really, I think the way they were operating, period, was going to ensure that they were not going to be sustainable.
So basically, I don't think Garvey, when he was talking about what he was talking about, a separate Black economy, I don't think that would have worked either, because you literally would have had to maybe find a Black owned farm, get all of your sources there, a Black owned, like you would have literally had to find everything. But eventually something would have had to come outside of what you were trying to do. And like you said, the higher cost, it would be just because it's from us and we don't have the same resources as the whites do. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have worked either. So
I
honestly,
think that if the Black community had something, so if you look at what Garvey was trying to say, if you look at the Cherokee Nation and some of the Native American nations that have been able to govern themselves, the help that they had was, they have gambling, right? And they had a resource for making money and making money off of people of different races. And I think that if Black people had been afforded some sort of business of
Reparation.
their own, some kind of reparation, yes, exactly, that things could have been very different. But I think that if history has shown us anything, capitalism was built off of slavery.
Yeah.
So I think that because Black people were literally the backs that this nation's economy was built on, that nobody wanted to give them reparation because capitalism needs poor people. Capitalism needs people that are starting behind the starting line.
Behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I mean, the starting line is just, they needed to keep Black people behind the starting line so that they could continue to make money in the way they had always made money. And so to avoid not having a slave population, they couldn't give reparations. But had they given reparations, I think that the Black community could have actually gotten ahead during this time.
Definitely.
I
And
think that
And
as
I mean, not
long
just having the starting line, but moving the bar every time something
Yes.
changes, and you still end up behind. And when I was reading, because of course I learned about Marcus Garvey years ago, but in reading this particular book in the context The only thing that really made sense with what he said was everybody going back to Africa. Okay. Putting yourself on equal footing, because when you walk in a bank, if I'm the same skin color as you and we look the same on paper, how am I being discriminated against, as opposed to how I am at home in the States just because I'm white? Just because I'm black, I'm already losing because the other person is white and I'm black. At least setting, getting put on some type of equal footing when it comes to those types of decisions being made.
Yeah, but going back to Africa, you still could have been at the bottom because you've changed. You're not who they are, so they might consider you as colonized or lesser than. So they still might not oust you make you an outcast too.
That could have been true, but at the same time, we have to make we can't. I'm gonna say this. I know people have their ideas about how people view us in Africa, or different countries in Africa, but I think we don't give them the benefit of the doubt with programs that they have now, like with the return in other countries, essentially, looking at us as their brothers and sisters and wanting to see us succeed, knowing the things that we've gone through, not to mention the fact if I'm taking my dollars from the US, which is already more valuable than somewhere else, I'm already ahead. And I tell people that all the time. For example, here, if I have, let's say if I had $400,000 in US dollars and I decide to move to Saudi Arabia, I'm already a millionaire here. Okay, because the dollar is much more valuable. It's going to stretch and I'm going to be able to do more, to purchase more. The same thing with other countries that you go to. And which is why I say all the time that I will not retire at home in the US, because I can get way more for my dollar somewhere else. The cost of living is cheaper. The cost of food is cheaper. Just the cost of having an overall quality of life is cheaper, and in most cases actually better than being at home. If we want to talk about the whole situation with COVID right now, here in Saudi Arabia, they have an excellent healthcare system. Even wait times for going to the hospital is completely different. You're in and out when they see you. Everyone here, they're paying for your care if you happen to contract COVID. You're not being left with $100,000 hospital bill if you have to stay in the hospital. So it's relatively different, is what I will say. But I don't want people to think that there's this idea that they view us differently in these African countries, because I have a lot of African friends from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Cameroon, from Kenya, and we have these discussions and they can't understand for the life of them why we think that they look down on us when they understand the things that we've gone through.
Actually, according to some mentors from afar that have been to Ghana like last year and is setting up trade routes and doing business over there, many of them want us back over there. They want us over there.
Exactly.
Oh wow.
But I want to go ahead and address something regarding reparations, and I'm gonna give you all a spoiler alert. There will be a question when I am the facilitator for chapter 5. So just be prepared for that.
Gotcha. You had a question, or you said you're gonna wait till chapter 5?
I said I will wait until chapter 5. There will be one of the questions. And if you were around last time when I did it, be prepared because it's going to be the same way. So I have a computer. I'm going to ask.
I was going through a whole college lecture like last. No, I'm messing with you. I like that format.
I wasn't there, so it's gonna be an experience for me.
Yeah, I only watched it because I wasn't there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Let me see. While I'm looking through my notes, is there anything that stood out to anybody or anything of interest, anything you wanted to discuss about chapter 3?
I think one of the interesting things she was talking about was she really broke down what the way that we understand what white flight is. Basically, when we were talking about how the black banks were basically backing the home loans, and it's crazy because I was reading that at the time it was actually required for Black people to make a 50% down payment for their home. Like before they could even think about getting a home, you had to have a 50% down payment. And also that when they were talking about once a neighborhood was seen as a Black neighborhood, how white people fled, and then that's what ultimately led to the decline and it becoming more so of the ghetto, because once they purchased that property, there was no appreciation. It was basically being depreciated as soon as they moved into the house based on it being Black people in the neighborhood. So they really did not have the ability to accumulate wealth in that capacity. And that's another way that the whites were able to, retain their wealth and their home values increased, because they were not allowing Black people into their neighborhoods, or when a Black family moved in, they were moving out.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned multiple different weeks. I think that more so than reparations as like monetary, is going to be the acquisition of land and land at appropriate values. Like the fact that Black land is automatically undervalued because of the location or because of the color of the people who live there is a huge setback. Like I said, most of our grandparents own their houses, but because of where they're located, a white grandparent owning their house, even though it might be the same size, it might have the same number of bathrooms, theirs may very well be worth 300,000-400,000, where our grandparents are worth like 30 and 40,000.
Right.
Oh, I was thinking that too. While I was reading, I was like, it's sad how much generational wealth we lost because of all of this tomfoolery going on back then. We could have had a lot more families who've had, wealth that you could just pass down to their kids, their kids, their kids. There could have been so many more things that we could have done. However, because they decided to block us at every turn, we lost out on that, and they get to sit up there on their generational wealth that we made them. That was really crazy. And properties that we'll never get back, land, all of it. I think that was in a previous chapter where it said we bought land after emancipation or something, but they came and took it back with another president or another rule. It was in another chapter.
Probably President Jackson, because he was an ass.
Honestly, I can't remember all these presidents' names and which ones weren't. I thought Wilson, it looks like, I think he was the one that did the most against Black people, but I can't remember. It's just like every president seems, And I was listening to a YouTuber the other day talk about somebody. Okay, somebody said Donald Trump was the greatest president ever. So the YouTuber was like, "Are you serious? He's better than Abraham Lincoln, who basically ended the Civil War and freed the slaves." And da da da. And I was thinking, he did do that on paper, but he didn't enforce it. So really, why do we keep crediting him with that? Like, I don't know. It just have we really had a great president in history yet? I mean, to a certain extent.
Well,
Not for black people.
I was about to say, Jessica, I haven't heard the videos, but I can already tell you, whoever those two people are not qualified to speak on behalf of Black people, at least not in that regard.
I always laugh. I was like, oh, here's a white person telling me all the stuff that Donald Trump has done for Black people, and I'm Black. Like, wait, what? Okay.
But I mean, but some Black people do believe that. I know I talked to a 16-year-old, one of my ex coworkers back when I was working at the job overnight or whatever, and he was one of the people that was still there when I was there, and I was like, yeah, Kamala and Biden are going to do their speech tonight, because that's when it was clear that he won or they won or whatever. And he was like, oh, hold on, I'm sorry, baby, I'm in a book club. Hold on. And I was like, oh, yeah. So he said, no, okay, I don't want to watch that. He said, to be honest, if I could vote, I would have voted for Trump. And I was like, why? He said, because Biden's a pedophile, and because I'm just not with Biden, and Trump has done so much for the Black community. And I'm like, what has he done? Like, I've honestly never met anybody who differed that was Black, and but he didn't want to get into it. He didn't want to tell me, but a lot of his friends felt the same way. And I'm trying to figure out what is making y'all think this stuff.
Because they don't read, they watch YouTube conspiracy theory based videos. And that's basically how everybody's getting brainwashed. Like, nobody literally reads or researches anything anymore. They just take everything that they're being fed and spew it, regurgitate it right back out.
Well, I mean, you can always shift anything for the media, because they talk about like how many Black people Trump has pardoned. Yeah, he's pardoned enough to make people look the other way when he lets all his friends off.
Right.
He's giving money to HBCUs is how they phrase it. It's the same exact money they get every year. They just don't have to complete an application for it annually anymore. Now it's biannually. So it's just kind of like, it's the media portrayal of things. It's like, whenever you make a graph and you put that, 98% has done this, but on the graph you put it up to 1,000%. So 98% still looks minuscule to the eye. It looks like that's nothing, but in reality, that's almost everything. So it's propaganda. It's how you position stuff to make people.
And that's why I say people don't read, because no matter what I see or whatever article it is, I'm going to read 10 other articles behind that one to get the full picture of what's really going on, from different sources, completely different sources. I'll use a couple here. I'll use some from like BBC or Al Jazeera or the Independent or the Guardian. Look at CNN, look at MSN, look at Forbes or Business Newsweek or stuff like that. I'm getting my view from everywhere, not just from one source, and people just don't take the time to do that.
Girl, I like to get mine from Fox too. I want to see what they saying.
I can't stomach it. I'm sorry. I can't. Not Fox even for a minute.
Fox had some moments where they've told the truth. They had moments. So
I saw a Facebook post this morning from Republicans talking about how Fox News was now owned by the Democrats and they weren't going to watch it anymore because one Fox News guy actually was like, "No, I don't know about this. I think that maybe Trump is not the best, and everybody's like, oh no, the Democrats got Fox.
Right. So they're doing Newsmax. They're doing it Newsmax and OANN now, right? And still doing Breitbart, and everybody's navigated, all the white supremacists and navigated over to Parler. So they can keep pushing the propaganda.
And y'all know I created a Parler account to be nosy, right?
Oh my goodness. See, I can't stomach it.
I don't even know what Parler is. So,
It's where the Klan meets now.
oh,
It's
Wow.
supposedly uncensored, you know, and they don't have fact checkers, so you can say whatever you want to.
Yeah, you can threaten the
I say
lives
sarcastically.
and, you know, perpetuate state violence, state sanctioned violence, all of that.
It's
I
bull.
mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's bull, because all these people are going on there so that they can say all the racist stuff they want to, and nobody say anything to them. It's ridiculous.
I seriously want to have a conversation with a racist person to figure out why they think that way. Of course, I've never met anybody really racist. I don't know why. I mean, maybe I've been lucky. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, a lot of people aren't going to be overtly racist to a Black person, especially in this climate. But I mean, it's what people say when they think they're comfortable. Like, there's a lot of racist white people, and they just say what they want to when they think they're in the company of like-minded people.
True. But like I told them before, I guess I don't associate with white people either. It's not a conscious thing. It's just I'm surrounded by and actually the white. Oh, you know what? Well, no, she doesn't. She's not racist. She's biased, but she just doesn't realize she is. And I just can't tell her. I don't have the heart to tell her. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I guess I kind of want to be a fly on the parlor wall to see what's going on, but
Girl, create you an account. You can get in all that. I've been
Oh
watching.
my gosh, you guys always call me out if I say some real stuff that's bull. Y'all let me know.
Don't worry, Katie.
Shonda's got me.
I knew it. I was gonna say if nobody else would, she will.
And I'm glad. I mean, honestly, that's why I joined this book club, was so that I could get called out, because I've grown up in a white Republican family. So I don't know everything. And until I joined this book club, I knew some history, but I didn't know history from the Black perspective in depth. And it's really changed my mind about what I think is okay.
Well,
And Katie, I think that what you just said is exactly what's wrong with 95% of the population. Like, my boyfriend, he told me last night, he was like, I feel like sometimes you're naive. And I was like, I don't think that I'm naive. I think that it's that I'm around enough white people and I'm related to enough white people to know that genuinely most of them have good hearts. They have been misinformed about history, and so they don't necessarily know right from wrong. And because everything that they've been inundated with since they were, knee high to a grasshopper has supported their ideologies and reinforced those misconceptions, then they really don't know that they're wrong. Now, granted, there are some that are just messed up and they're wrong all the way across the board, but I feel like most people are good. They're just ignorant.
so with both of the statements you two just made, Jasmine and Katie, really be careful, because I don't want you hearing about an experience where you've had to fall out with a family member and inevitably cut them off, because I know white people that have had to do that. And that brings me to my question: have you all had experiences where you've had to cut off certain family members or close friends to family members based upon that?
Just say Christmas is gonna be interesting with my family this year.
You getting white fragility as stocking stuffers for everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Somebody in my aunt's getting my annotated copy. Play with me if you want to. It's gonna be in her stocking Christmas morning, annotations and all.
Fly on the wall. Wish I could
And
be
I
a
told
fly
my
on the
mom,
wall.
and my mom was like, "Please don't." I was like, "She need to be informed. She got 4 mixed kids. She needs to know better. Just because you got half black babies don't mean you ain't racist on the inside."
Okay. Yeah.
I try right now, I'm trying not to cut people off because I want to be able to share with them some of the things that have changed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
If it gets to a point where they aren't receptive to having the conversation and they just double down on their racist beliefs, then there is a possibility that I'd be like, you know what? I can't tolerate this. I can't be around you and think and you and me say that it's okay for you to be the way that you are.
I,
Right.
I only asked that question because the people, well, the young lady who I know, and Jasmine, you probably know who I'm talking about because she actually teach down here at a school, and one of her sons is not that much further from you in age, in fact. But to make a but I only asked that question because I know that even when Jane Elliott went through her experience when Dr. King was assassinated, and she experimented her blue eye, brown eye experiment on her students in the late 60s, that she ended up losing all her friends. And I don't think she lost any family members, but no one really wanted to talk to her ever again. And I know that can happen to some people. And the individual who I'm referring to even said that she had to cut off her brother and one of her brothers and one of her sisters. And even one of her and all of her sons, well, she has 2 sons and 1 daughter. And one of her, her son lives in the exact neighborhood my grandparents live in, and we used to play basketball when we were younger. And I even went to school with one of her daughters, although I am older. And what she said was that her older son, although mixed, has never dated any white girls. And she asked her son that, and she said that he didn't want to deal with the drama of coming from dating. He didn't want to deal with the white daddy drama. Basically, is what he said. I just often want to know, like, how are those experiences, and how challenging and how uncomfortable is it being white or being part white and having to deal with that?
I mean, I've encountered it. Like my high school sweetheart, his grandmother did not like the fact that I was biracial and told him that he needed to go get him a black girl and that he could not bring a white girl in her house and that I constituted as one. So I've encountered it from both sides. I've been looked at sideways by white people because I am half black. So I feel like we just kind of get it on both ends. You just kind of navigate through and you just see people for who they are and you identify their biases. Like, I mean, I'm a therapist, so I'm all about the where did this come from? Now, granted, when I was in high school, I wasn't mature enough to do that. I was just like, fuck you and your grandma. Sorry, Shonda, you edited that out. But like now I'm a bigger, better person, and I can kind of reflect back and be like, where does that come from? And I feel like trauma and personal experiences and all of that stuff shapes your perspective. And I can respect that people have different perspectives. So, yeah.
I think that needs to be on a t-shirt. Fuck you and your grandma.
But is it better for y'all to cut? Okay, I know you should cut toxic people out of your life, but is it better for you to cut off family members that have a different opinion if it's not like if so say I can see you not bringing certain people around. Well, maybe that is.
Well, Christmas at my house is always interesting because I have this is hard to explain. So my mama had 4 daughters, and all of them dated black men in high school. One of my aunts married a black man, and has children with him. And it wasn't until my cousins, my grandmother's grandchildren, got a little bit older that finally everybody came to Christmas dinner. Like,
Oh wow.
so
So
because
similar in
and
my
her
family, Katie, like my
and,
family's similar. Finish on, I'll tell mine.
and her statement one, and I remember it because it was Thanksgiving and it was the first Christmas everybody came to Christmas dinner, right? And she looked at me and my cousins. We were all sitting in the living room, and some of my cousins decided, they decided to come out that year too as being gay or being trans. And she looked at us because one of my cousins had just come out, and she was like, well, damn, I guess if we're all going to be trans and gay and marry Black people and have mixed children and have, she said, I guess we just all need to get together and have Christmas this year, huh? And I mean, that was literally the moment she was like, all right, fine then.
So for me, I'll go ahead and finish.
I was just going to say that, like, cutting people off has not been a thing in my family, but it's always a really, really interesting Christmas.
So for mine, on my mom's side, who is the white parent in my household, there are 13 grandchildren, and over half of us are biracial. And I am the second born biracial, and I'm the first one that has baby pictures with my grandmother. My older cousin who is mixed, he does not. My baby pictures, my mom moved back home pregnant with me, but didn't tell my grandmother she was pregnant by a Black man. And then it was like, surprise, my baby's a little darker than all the rest of y'all. And my grandmother, even though she didn't kick my mom out, still felt some kind of way. And there was not full acceptance until a few months later, my next cousin was born. And then my grandmother realized that, okay, out of my first 4 grandchildren, 3 are biracial. I'm either going to have to accept them or I'm not going to see my grandkids. And so from that point, it was just kind of like, okay, it is what it is.
Okay, so it's probably, I mean, so for both of y'all, it kind of worked out in where the parents weren't cut off for their views, but the family just learned to accept it over time.
Right, which is still kind of wrong because because in this situation it was like somebody who had racist views for most of their life only accepted it because they had grandchildren that were biracial, and that's still not being racist, if that makes sense.
But you can't blame her too much if she was taught to be that way.
Absolutely. And a lot of that came from the Great Depression. So my grandma had 10 brothers and sisters, and they were always told that Black people were competing for their jobs on farms, and that's why they were poor.
Oh.
And so that's kind of where that came from, where that hatred came from, was pitting poor white people against Black people, because that way it made it Black people's fault and not the white banks or the system.
Right.
Yeah, they talked about that in New Jim Crow, is that the best way to, keep things as status quo is to put a bigger divide between poor whites and Blacks, and when in reality, they're pretty much on the same level.
Yeah, even here, but the good thing is that at least your grandmothers had the capability to change. They've learned to accept it. I mean, it may not be their ideal or have been their ideal, but at least they can change with the times. There's some people that will go to their grave stubborn, about their viewpoints, and they won't change it no matter what. They will cut people off. They will say, well, you're out of my will. So, people that have the capacity to change, I feel like it wasn't so deeply rooted in them that it changed who they were or who they could become. So that's the good part. But I know it's almost time I know it's time to go. I just had one quick question. You know, in the chapter they mentioned the Douglas Bank, and they said that it failed in 1930 along with the Binga Bank. But the Douglas Bank was part of the Federal Reserve at that time, so it really should have had backing. So what? But it never said why the Douglas Bank failed. Does anybody know? Did they try to reach out to? What did the Federal Reserve supposed to do? Anybody know why the Douglas Bank failed? That was on page 75. I'm sorry.
I'm looking it up now.
I had that on my list to research, but I didn't get to read until this morning, so I haven't had time to look anything up yet.
Yeah.
There were some names in there too that I wasn't sure of that I didn't get a chance to look up.
Mm. True. Yeah, because I know the Federal Reserve was supposed to, I guess, um, I don't know. I thought they were supposed to be kind of like be like the Chicago, what did we say that was? Charter or something? The Chicago,
Yeah, you're right. They're supposed to insure the loans that you can't
Thank
not
you.
have the money. Mhm.
And so I'm wondering if it was a similar situation where they reached out, but they were told no. But I don't think you could do that legally as a government federal bank. I'm Federal Reserve. I don't know. Because the Chicago Clearinghouse wasn't backed by the federal government, but the Federal Reserve, I'm assuming, was backed by the federal government. So they had to do a payout if somebody asked for it. If you made them a member, I'm assuming. So there was no reason the Douglas Bank should have failed because they had a lot of fail safes.
You all, I gotta go ahead and drop off so I can, as Yashonda said, finish up my college lecture that I'll do in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You all it's always a pleasure being a part of these in-depth conversations. You all have a nice day.
You too. Thank
Bye,
you.
Andre. See you later.
You all later.
I tried to look it up, but they were acting like the Douglas Bank was still active. So I guess.
It could have just been that they didn't have as much capital, even though they were insured. But
They had 2 million. It was the largest of any black-owned bank in the nation.
yeah,
That still
wasn't
may not have been
like
enough.
2% of wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past anybody to just say that it goes into that systemic stuff that they just didn't get as much help and as much support. They probably got the bare minimum. The system loves to say, but we did it. But we did what we
Okay,
said
wait
we
a
had to
minute.
do.
I think I found something. Hold on. Let me see if it comes up.
Go away. Not
Mhm.
now, the dog. Talking to the
Oh.
dog. No, he's
I
not
want
sitting
a
here while we're cooking.
dog.
He comes in optimistic that I'm going to drop something.
You
It says,
should.
okay, so I just skimmed this. It says something about faulty investments and hold on. Mm. I'm gonna have to go through because I can't just use one source. So I'm gonna have to look at a whole bunch of them just to get my okay, I just found this in this is the old jet Jet magazine.
Mm. What did they say?
Let's see. I gotta read these. I have
Okay.
an answer for you for our next, or I'll just post it in the chat.
Okay, cool. That works. And I'll try to look into it too to see if I can come up with something more. But yeah, we can talk about it in chat. Awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
but everybody else ran before we could decide who's gonna
Oh yeah, Monique gone. I didn't even notice her drop out.